Hello, I'm Kimberly Henry, and this is Living the Good Life. In this series, we'll feature conversations around ways to embrace the goodness of life and take a big, juicy bite out of it. Food for the soul and the funny bone. Learn to give more time to yourself, become a better friend, lead an amazing life, and how to tell the best joke at the party. Living the good life can mean different things to different people. Whatever it is for you, I hope you'll find some inspiration here to live your most joyful, authentic life. Now, on to today's conversation. Resilient, bold, daring, and a little rough around the edges. If this sounds like life goals to you, stick around while we talk about resiliently embracing midlife, career, and life transitions with our guest, Simply Speaks. Simply is an entrepreneur, transformational speaker, author, a non-binary person, and the CEO of Simply Speaks, LLC, which provides workshops, seminars, and speaking engagements to women's organizations, as well as organizations that seek to improve the quality of the personal and professional experience of the everyday career woman. Simply, it is a great pleasure to have you with us today. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I am excited about this conversation. You and I have known each other for a few years and have had some conversations around this topic. But I think it's really an important discussion that we can have today, but that you are having kind of on your platform, on your stage, and as you go out and speak to groups and speak publicly on social media. Talk a little bit about what it is in a typical day for you. What's your life today?
My life, I call my life resilience on the go. I'm always on the go doing some type of work to better myself and to better the community and to inspire others, especially women in business. So my day-to-day consists of me using myself as a mirror of what it is to be authentic, what it is to be resilient and bold.
I love the social media that you're putting out there, the graphics. You have an incredible knack for really nailing what it is you want, the message you want to get out there, at least as I see it. How are you really creating that? And is that authentic to what your day-to-day life looks like? Because you come out, you've got some pretty bold statements, some pretty bold coloring. And, we see you working out. We see you out there on the go. Is that true to life? Does your social media reflect who you are?
Absolutely, 100%. And Kimberly, the great thing about it is that I've overcome the idea of getting validation from others. And because of that, I'm able to post an authentic picture, a capture of my everyday life. Of course, I can't give everything, but for the most part, what you see is what you get. And I've learned, over a course of many years, being, an employee and now a business owner, the importance of showing up as you are. It took me a long time to do that. So today I do it without a care in the world, and hope that others will see that it is so natural just to be.
How do you straddle that line of not showing up necessarily caring about what others are going to think of you, but also showing up in a way that makes you feel that you are in your place, that you are empowered? I mean, because you are dressed for success. So if you don't care what others are thinking of you, why go to that place? What's that about?
Why go to the place of showing up for success? In life, I look at life as an assignment. I believe that we all have a life contract, a life assignment. And because of that is the reason why I show up dressed for success. I'm very much into uniform. Mm-hmm. You see my branding colors. And mm-hmm. I've allowed myself to do away with, the worldly idea of what it means to show up. Mm-hmm. And because of that, now I recognize the need to just be in uniform. So my uniform is my armor, my shield. It keeps me focused on my assignment. And when I talk about a life assignment, that purpose, that thing that we are all here to do in life. And I found that, years before, when I didn't show up in the uniform, I wasn't focused on my message, my calling.
I find that to be true, because I work remotely from, wherever I want to be. I can show up to work in my pajamas, and the focus is not always there. If I'm working on creative stuff, I can kind of get into that flow. But if I really need to be organized and on top of things, it really does make a difference if I show up. And that means getting up, getting dressed, getting your on your game. It makes such a huge difference.
Absolutely. When I think of, the showing up, for work, whether you're working from home or clocking into that 9 to 5, the idea and understanding that we are all a brand with a message. So I say to people when I'm speaking on resilience and showing up, how are you representing your brand? Not the title, not Simply Speaks LLC, but simply the person, or Kimberly the person. And so it is so important to understand that concept of showing up as your brand.
Mm-hmm. I think it sends a message about what people can expect from you. And if you're consistent in how you present yourself to the world, not necessarily catering to the world, but just be consistent about showing up as who you are, then people begin to understand what to expect from you. And I think that helps relationships. Have you seen that happen?
Have I seen it in my relationships with people? Yes, I've seen the good of it and I've seen the not so good of it. And I take those lessons and I continue to show up, as I am. And I would say to you, and I congratulate myself. Today's 2 years that I've been sober. I stopped drinking alcohol 2 years ago. And when I look at that journey, going back, not so much staying in the past, but looking at the past and recognizing that I was doing some serious damage to my brand by entertaining things that didn't align with my life calling. And so some people are, they believe that I am, this rigid person and, all of that. But the goal here is to really understand when we do things that are not in alignment with the brand, many people looking on will assume that that is who we are.
Right. Because that's their perspective. That's their experience of you.
Right. And I think of Les Brown. Les Brown was someone that inspired me. I've studied his material, had a chance to meet him stepping out on Crazy Faith. And one thing that has stuck with me in 19 years of my personal conversation and sitting down with Les Brown is that he said, if you hang out with 5 alcoholics, 5 drunks, you're going to be number 6. And Kimberly, I tell you, at my lowest point, I look back and I realized that I was number 6. And I had to make a decision to stop. And I'm not saying that the drinking and, Friday night get-togethers weren't fun, but the focus was more on the party and not on the message.
I think we can all relate to that. At some stage in almost everyone's life, they have gotten swallowed up by something that's not serving them. And many, many people find themselves in that drug, alcohol, just not trying, not making an effort scenario. I want to dive into your story a little bit, but before that, I want to go to our topic of resiliently embracing midlife career and life transitions. What is the number one message you'd like people to know as they move through career and life transitions, and how resiliency comes into play?
Well, the one thing I would like people to know, and I've been reading Charles Fillmore's 12 Powers of Man. I've read the book several times, but each time I pick it up, just some juicy nuggets. And one thing that sticks with me as I'm talking to you is where he says, let no man think that he can retire from living. Let no man think that he can retire from living. That transition. Oftentimes we think that, there's something wrong with seeking to transform. And transformation is nothing more than changing the structure of what was to what you want it to be. And so my idea of, inspiring people is to say, hey, just do it. You have the power to do it.
And that can be anything. That can be, as we said, career and life transitions. So that can be making a change in your career, making a change in your lifestyle, making a change in your geographic location. I mean, there's just so many things that that can apply to, especially as we're moving into those of us who are moving into the, oh gosh, what do I want to call it? Let's just be generous and say midlife. hopefully, hopefully that means there's a whole nother life on the other side of that. And then also with the transition we're having globally with the pandemic and with supply chain issues and with the global marketplace changing. So there's a lot of that going on right now in so many different ways. And it does get to feeling like every day you turn around and there's just something else. So when you say being resilient, is that about getting through all of that in a specific way? Or, I mean, what's the alternative of being resilient?
The alternative is to settle, to give in. And so I don't want anyone to give in, to learn to quickly recover from situations. And you're so correct, Kimberly. The world has experienced a huge crisis globally. And crisis is universal at this point. And we don't know when things are going to stop. And the one thing we start to look at midlife, we often hear that term, midlife crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Why not midlife? Why not midlife clarity? It takes on a different feel when we start to clarify who we are and what we're supposed to be doing, as opposed to walking and thinking that you're in a crisis because you want to change careers, or you want to move to another state, or you want to just become who you are. That within itself requires one to get clear, to know your reason why.
I'm a firm believer, but I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit and just ask, why is that important? Why is it important that we go for what we want, that we find clarity in the journey? Why is that important versus just kind of hibernating and being accepting of where we are?
It's important to go for what you want and go after your dreams and your goals, because at the end of the day, we're all going to transition to what we call death. And a lot of people don't like to talk about that. And that is the reality. We see more and more people transitioning over, and many people, have not lived their full life. I on social media, I go through social media, and I've seen, I can't tell you how many days, if not every day, where I scroll through and someone is posting that a loved one has transitioned. And when I see those posts and those messages, it's a firm reminder for me to live my best life as authentically as I can, because we can't escape what's to come in the end. So we should be doing all that we can while we can.
Time waits for no man, as they say.
Correct.
The transition is coming, and we don't get, I don't think we get extra time because we haven't finished our assignment.
Correct. And so when you look at completing the assignments, when I look at, then we talk about, career transitions, there's so many people in the workplace that are working and they're not happy with their current positions. And so we have in the world, we have dreamers and we have creators, dreamers who dream and have the vision of doing something more. And then there are those creators that actually go out and create and paint the canvas for themselves. But what if we were to merge those two concepts together, dreaming and creating, to create the good life?
Yes.
Oh, what a wonderful world it would be.
Yes. Amen. You're singing my song. I think we're done here. No, I really want us to peel back a little bit now, because you weren't always this person that you are today. You weren't always this bold, daring, resilient person who is inspiring hundreds, thousands of people to to go out there and embrace and create their life. What was life like before, and what led you to become such an inspirational person with this message?
Wow, great question, Kimberly. My journey, growing up and growing up and being kicked out of home as a teenager is life changing.
Mm,
And so, being kicked out as a teenager and living in the streets, when I say in the streets, not living outside, but sleeping from sofa to sofa and trying to figure out how I was going to eat. I
mhm.
had to become resilient at that time. And so my idea during that time, and even today, was to make sure that I've always had a place to rest my head and something to eat. So I was resilient in that nature, making sure that I was safe and okay. However, during that time, I was so broken because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to be. And so I had to learn as I began to let go and speak the truth, my truth. I had to let go of the idea of that I couldn't do anymore. When you come from inner city living or poverty, or, low income areas, there's this mindset that there is nothing more. This is it. And so I purposely, as a kid, and I recall it, so vivid. As a kid, I would always speak the opposite of everything that was said to me, although I was still weak at that time. So
Mm,
for me, I've always looked at, and I continue to look at what's on the other side. What's on the other side? This being on public assistance, that's just a stepping stone. I was on welfare from age 19 to age 23.
mhm.
It was a stepping stone. But coming from the community, it was life. This is what you do. You get food stamps, you get Section 8, you find an apartment where the rent is low. And I'm going, well, what about the high rent? What else can I do? And so my life has been, and my journey has been recognizing my best self. And it hasn't been easy because when you start to look at the healing process, you're always going to be working through something. People believe that you healed and that's it. No, there's always that next level. So I had to learn to peel back the layers and show up and say, here I am, take up space, do the things that others aren't willing to do. And so even, and at this moment, as I'm speaking to you, before I came on, I said, okay, I am going to sit here and I'm going to talk about things that I don't want to talk about,
Mm.
because this is what resilience is about. It's about, bouncing back and doing that very thing that you don't want to do, letting go of the fear.
Mm. How did you? I'm sure that not everybody was on board with what you were telling yourself, what you were probably saying to the world. How did you get by that with all of the negativity around you? How did you still rise?
I had no other choice but to rise.
Mm,
I refuse to let my journey, the experience, take over me.
mm,
I refuse to let it take over me. And I'll say to you, Kimberly, I was so afraid in the beginning. I was trying to pull family and friends into this idea of success because I didn't want to walk alone. And the universe, source, God, whatever you want to call it, put me in a position where I would be walking alone. I had no other choice but to take the leap. And so 20 years ago, I believe it's been now, 20 years ago, I made a final decision to walk away from my DNA family. And that is hard. My family of origin. A
mhm.
lot of people aren't able to do that. And I'm not saying that, the listeners need to walk away from anyone that, treats them, as naysayers or what have you. But what I'm saying is that we have to look at the people around us and recognize whether or not they are good for us.
Mhm.
And for me, being kicked out of home and being treated like an outsider, I had to make a decision because I wanted so bad, Kimberly, to be in the family. I wanted so bad to be a part. But when I started to look at life from a different paradigm, I realized that I had the power to walk away. I had the power to say, wait a minute, I am somebody special. And if you don't want me, shame on you.
Do you have a tool or an exercise that's so powerful, what you just said, that helps the people that you work with have the inner strength that it requires simply to make that call on your own behalf? How do you impart that to others?
So with others, my message is to get still, to connect with self, and just ask yourself a few questions. The first one, number one, why am I here? And so when we begin to ask that question, why am I here? How can I be used up? We need to pause and wait for that response back. That's number one. Number two, the next very important question that every resilient warrior, as I call the people, every resilient warrior needs to take a moment to ask whether or not the people that they are surrounding themselves with are good for their soul. Not good for the experience, good for the soul. And then you can get to that next level. And then you can say, okay, I need to eliminate this person. I need to go see this person every year or what have you. And you can go forward.
Mm-hmm. It's like, it's just, I keep coming back to that, peeling the layers of an onion, just a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. When you made that decision and you're this young human, how did you go from the 23-year-old who was living on public assistance to moving into your own business and being an accomplished speaker and an author? What steps do you take? Because there's so many people in that situation that you can inspire.
Right. I started looking at, again, my goal was in the beginning, I need to make sure I have something to eat. Here I am raising this young child. I have an adult offspring now. We don't want to call adults children. I have an adult that is 28 years old. And at that time, she's a young girl. And it's like, okay, I have this other person that I need to care for, and I need to make some changes. So the first change was I need to continue educating myself. Education is very important. I'm a lifelong learner. And so being, homeless and in various homeless shelters, I've always set up business. So whether I was doing hair or some of the other things that I didn't want to do, I recognized that I needed to create business. And then I started to look at, okay, what is my purpose? And early on, I didn't know how to sit still and meditate and connect to my inner self, but I knew that I wanted to speak. I didn't know what was the idea or how to go about becoming a professional speaker or any of those things. But I knew that I had a message, and I have a message of resilience. And so every day, I started to look at, okay, what can I do? How do I make this a business? I was working a 9-to-5 job, and it's like, okay, this job, I'm not happy here. The job is not allowing me to fly and be the butterfly that I am. So what can I do? And so I started thinking, Kimberly, if I can make my 2-week paycheck in one day, what would that look like? And so I had the opportunity to, I was doing some consulting work. At the time, I called it a hustle. And I recognized that there was an opportunity. And I'm big on crazy faith and taking a leap into that next level, that next transition, that next transformation. And I wrote a contract, didn't know anything about writing contracts, but I figured it out. And I presented it to an executive director of our organization. And that contract totaled my yearly salary. And I said, if this CEO takes this contract, I'm going to resign from my 9-to-5 job. And guess what? He signed the contract. Fantastic. 2 weeks later, I resigned. When I look at that story, before then, I took a leap. I quit my job at 20, I think I was 27 years old. And I said, I'm going to become a public speaker. Within 6 months, I became homeless because I didn't know what I was doing back then. But I was hungry, as Lynn Brown said. I was hungry. And so we look at success and we don't talk about the failures. I failed several times, but I keep on getting up. That's the difference.
That's something that isn't talked about very often, is all of the failures on the road to success. And sometimes they're big failures.
huge, huge failures. And so when we look at like social media is a big platform where everyone is, looking for the next thing. And so many people are looking for the opportunity to become business owners, entrepreneurs, or to get that big moment, that 15 minutes of fame. And you look at social media shows various people, doing what they do on a daily basis. And I think it's very great. But not often do you hear about the behind the scene situations that take place with entrepreneurs. Right now, I'm in my office, and there are days when in the beginning where I didn't know how I was going to pay my administrative manager. I didn't know, I couldn't even pay myself. There's some days even I can't pay myself. I'm covering overhead, but I keep on going. That is the resilience that we need to look at, especially in the midlife. Oftentimes people think that, or at midlife, I'm too old, I can't do it, I don't have the skill set. And I say to any person within that season element of midlife that the opportunities are already there. You have the experience. You have a toolbox full of knowledge. What are you waiting for? Who are you waiting for?
And I would just add to that, if not now, when?
If not now, when?
If not now, when?
Because as we know, if not now, when? Because as we know, and this is a great dialogue, Kimberly, because as we know, there are so many people that are waiting for retirement only to retire, to transition to death. What are you waiting for? If not now, then when?
I have seen that so many times. It's heartbreaking, heart-wrenching. And I saw something recently that really, nailed it. We work until we're 65. We work. That's like 50 years of our lives so that we can have maybe 10 or 20 years of retirement. And that, I think we are in a moment. I'm really excited and hopeful for the future, because I think we're in a moment where people like you and others are helping folks understand that life can be different. And we do not have to wait until we're 65 to create whatever it is that we want to experience.
Absolutely. And we should not wait to 65. Look at our elderly people who are over 65 that took on social media during COVID-19. There's so many elderly people on TikTok and Facebook and just about every other platform. I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed by the elderly.
There's definitely some really great folks out there who are doing incredible things. Not only are they, doing the trendy stuff, but they're creating businesses.
They're creating businesses.
Yeah. And lives. I happen to be in this transition of going to full-time RV life, and I'm absolutely loving it. And there's so many of us out here that are doing that because we can now. So I think you have to embrace what's going on in the environment as well, and take advantage of any opportunities that come your way to expand into what it is that you want your life to look like.
Right. And then when we look at the theme of midlife transition, career transition, and living the good life, I really love that whole idea, to live the good life, to create success on your own terms.
Yes. I like that. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So we were taught, look for the picket fence, get the house, do all of these great things. And then we look at external things for our idea of definition of success. No, success is what you make it. I'm successful every day, but there's someone from my community that doesn't see what I do as successful. Guess what? That's on them. We cannot look for the big shiny car, all of these material things, because although they're nice, success is, how do you feel on the inside? Success is recognizing your authentic nature. Success is allowing your eyes to see something new each and every day. And not many get to do that.
That works for me. Something different every single day. Yeah, absolutely. I started out the show with the words resilient, bold, daring, and a little rough around the edges. Does that apply specifically to you?
It applies to me and to any other person that, is a little rough around the edges. I'm rough around the edges. I recognize that I don't fit the definition of most people in the workplace. When I worked 9 to 5, I didn't fit in because I always ruffled feathers, and not in a bad way, but in a way where I'm saying, wait a minute, why can't we do something different? Let's be change agents. Let's not keep on doing the same thing. And so we have to be rough around the edges. And what do I mean by that? Shaking some things up, ruffling a few feathers, because when we create conflict, then we open up the doors for change and transformation to walk on in. And that sounds like goodness to me.
What would that look like in a practical sense? So maybe someone who is at their midlife in a job that they've been in for a while and just feeling like they haven't really lived the life they want to live. What does ruffling the feathers look like in that case?
Ruffling the feathers in that case for that person who hasn't lived the life that they want to live, or working, in a space that brings them joy, is to first ruffle their own feathers, go within and go, wait a minute, what is it that I need to work on? Because it all starts with the self.
Yeah.
So if one is working in a job that they're not happy at, wait, go within, ruffle your own feathers. Why are you still sitting there? Because at the end of the day, I like to believe that we all know, each and every person knows what they need to be doing. Each and every person knows the direction that they should be taking to get to their next level.
What stops them?
What stops people from going to that next level? Fear. Fear is the biggest blocker to transformation. And so when we let go of the fear, false evidence appearing real, when we let that go, doors start to open. And that's when you look at the idea of fear, in the workplaces and career changes, again, there's so many midlife people that are concerned with not being enough. I can't go to the next job or create my own business because I may not be good at that. So when you set yourself up to fail, you sabotage the opportunity to create your transition.
You have to be willing to fail.
You have to be willing to fail.
Someone wrote a book, and you probably know, about failing forward. I love that. I love that title. And it really speaks to what you're talking about. I would like to know a time when you felt like you really had it dialed in, whether personal or career. Share with us maybe a positive experience, a positive memory story of when you just knew that you had kind of sort of figured this out. I was just saying, that moment of joy, I think I got this.
I think I got this. Okay. That moment, and I think I got this. I'm going to keep on doing this. That moment, I'm going to go back to some years ago, because it was the reason why it made me look at my life and keep on going no matter what. As I said to you, I left my job in my 20s. I quit the job to become a speaker and to figure out how to become a professional speaker. And within 6 months, my savings was gone. And I found myself in a homeless shelter for the third time with my daughter. And at that time, I had to make a decision. You know what? I have a college degree. I have to return to work and save up my money again to relocate. And so I was in a homeless shelter, and I was looking at my email. I went through an email. This is back when I had Yahoo. And there was an email from Les Brown, the marketing email, what I know now is a marketing email. But the email, it said, if you're ready to live your best life, meet me in Orlando, Florida for a weekend seminar. I took that message. It was for me. The problem, Kimberly, was that I didn't have I believe it was $3,995 to get into the seminar. I'm like, I don't have the money, but I need to get there. This is my moment. And so I looked into my account, and I had maybe $500, a little over $500. And I said, what do I do? And I made a decision looking out of that shelter, out of the window onto the roof where there was garbage and rats. And I made a decision, Kimberly, that I was going to take a leap of faith and go meet Mr. Les Brown. I booked a round trip ticket with JetBlue, and I had a family member babysit my daughter. And I got on that plane. Now I got on the plane, Kimberly, with a sign, a storefront sign that said Bronx motivational speaker seeking Les Brown. I knew I didn't have the money to get inside of that event. So I called the hotel and I spoke with the customer service person. I told them I was coming to visit Les Brown, that I didn't have money to get into the workshop, but I would like to give out my business cards. And the person was like, wow, that is so bold. You're so daring and resilient. And I said to her, it's called crazy faith, because you only get one opportunity. And so I made my way out to Florida with no food. I had no money. I had peanuts from the flight attendant. I got to Florida and I had on my best suit and top hat. And I got to Florida. It was my first time leaving the Bronx. And I got to Florida. It was 95 degrees. I'll never forget. And here I am sweating bullets in this hat, just rough around the edges, still not sure of my gender identity at that time. And I'm like, I'm setting up this sign. I'm like, okay, I'm setting up the sign. And here comes that inner voice, that intuition, that instinct. That inner voice said, you're going to meet Mr. Les Brown today. And I was like, what? I thought I was losing my mind, Kimberly. That inner voice said, you're going to meet Mr. Les Brown today. So I was like, okay. I set the sign up and I stood there to give out my business cards. And as I was dusting the sign off, who walks in front of me, coming right towards me with a bowl of Chinese noodles and chopsticks? Mr. Les Brown. And I'm like, is this deja vu? It's 95 degrees out. I didn't eat anything. I must be losing my mind. And that inner voice said, this is your moment. And I walked up to him and I said, Mr. Les Brown, I am a motivational speaker from the Bronx. If you give me an opportunity, I'll be the best speaker you ever had. Now, can you imagine how this person was looking at me?
Oh my goodness.
Right? When it was said and done, he says, well, what? I explained it again in my best voice. He said, get into that room, go inside the room and come on in here. And he took my sign and I was like, oh, snap, I'm in here. This manifesting thing really works. So I go inside. I felt so out of place at that time because there was some sharp people inside the room dressed up in nice suits. And there I was, a little rough around the edges and sweaty. And I interfered with this seminar, but I got the opportunity to sit in the back with Les Brown. And he said, what do you want to do with yourself? I said, well, I want to be a spoken word artist and a motivational speaker. And he says, well, you let go of the poetry part. You can be a speaker. You can be a great speaker. If you focus and get your life together, you're going to be making this amount of money. And he showed me a check, Kimberly, for $100,000. Now, I ain't never seen so many zeros. I'm coming from the hood, as they call it. I'm like, $100,000? That's how much he's getting paid for this event? You know, at the end of that, I went on stage and I spoke. When I left that event, Kimberly, I left with a couple of $100 in my pocket. I wasn't looking for money, but the people gave me the money because I was speaking. I made my way back to the Bronx, New York. And with that money, I bought a gift for my daughter. I made my way to Barnes and Nobles and I bought every Les Brown book, every Ayala Van Zandt book. And I decided at that moment that I was going to do whatever it took to heal from the trauma and to live my best life.
That's a total mic drop moment. I don't even want to say anything. That is an amazing story. I had never heard that story. You got on the stage at that event based on what you did. That is amazing.
I got on that. I didn't expect to get on the stage, Kimberly. Mr. Brown said, let's give Simply a moment to speak. And I got on that stage and I didn't even know how to do public speaking. I knew how to speak poetry. And I got on the stage and I did my best spoken word. I did the best spoken word, and I was like, and I forget it now, but it was like years and years of not knowing the untold story of a lost person trapped in trauma. My eyes have seen the swords of my siblings being lashed by the swords of death, and yet I did nothing. And when I finished doing that piece, I forget it now, but when I finished reciting that piece, everyone was standing giving me a standing ovation.
Amazing.
And I was like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
If that is not the prime example of bold, daring, and a little rough around the edges, I don't know what is. That is absolutely amazing. So I would definitely say you are an expert on the subject here.
Oh, yeah. But first, and see, this is the thing about getting to the next level of success. In order to get there, you have to work through your stuff. And so that was 20 years ago, just about 18 years ago, somewhere along there. And so I had to let go of all the traumas. People are like, oh, you're not speaking. No, I had to learn how to heal. And healing doesn't take place overnight. So it's been a 15-year, 18-year journey of letting go of what I thought I couldn't do, of letting go of the idea that I couldn't show up and just be myself. And so people in the midlife and working in the workplace and career transitions, many are afraid just to be, because many have showed up. We don't like to talk about this, but many have showed up and clocked into 9 to 5 places, not being their true selves, not being their authentic selves.
Yes. We need to wrap this up, but this conversation could go on and on. I encourage people to reach out to you, Simply, and learn more of your story, follow you. You are always unveiling and sharing your gifts, your talents, your message via your social media platforms. And there's just so much that you have to offer and so much more we could talk about today. But I know that you need to go on to another meeting. Any last words, and how would you like people to reach out to you?
So, and thank you so much for this experience and opportunity, Kimberly. What I would like to close out and to remind, the listeners, when we look at living the good life, we think that if we change, we lose out on something. But in reality, when we allow ourselves to change authentically, to go within, we win. You win when you go within and you allow yourself to just be, to transition no matter what, and more importantly, to transition with no apologies. If anyone is interested in reaching out to me, you can find me at www.SimplySpeaks-LLC. You can key in the name Simply Speaks. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm always open for great dialogue and inspiring others to be bold and daring.
And tell us where we can find your book as well.
The book is available at Amazon. You can find the book, Instinct and Intuition, The Uprise of the Resilient Woman. You can find that book on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Target, I believe, and some of the other book outlets. And I will say, in regards to the book, so much has transitioned in my life since I wrote the book. And many people hear the title, Instinct and Intuition, The Uprise of the Resilient Woman. The book has nothing, it has to do with me, but the book is written for women who are ready to tap into their own instinct and intuition. And I share my life experience as a woman before transitioning from female to male. So I hope that the books, if you buy the book, I hope that you're inspired by the messages and the stories that are there on building resilience and walking into your most authentic self.
Wonderful. And I look forward to, hopefully in the future, an updated version of that book. I think just sharing your transition and your future experiences is going to be an amazing story.
It's coming. Look out for it.
I will. Thank you again, Simply, for spending some time with us. Resilient, bold, daring, and a little rough around the edges. Resilient speaker, entrepreneur, and author. We are so glad to have you today. Go out there and live the good life. Be sure to check the show notes for links mentioned in this episode and join us in the Living the Good Life Facebook community for previews of each episode, the opportunity to pose questions directly to our guests, bonus content, and a community of people committed to living their best life and sharing the journey. Thanks for listening. Let us know what value you received from this episode and what you'd like us to explore in the future in the comments. And please take a moment to drop us a like or some stars. I'm Kimberly Henry. Let's get out there and live the good life.